positivity, encouragement, and I know where to get it. Let's rise. Come on, come on, rise. Let's go higher, higher, higher. Rise with yourself. Rise with yourself. Howdy! Howdy, I say now. I'm telling you right now, it's good to be here. Welcome to Rise with Lisette Live Talk Show, sponsored by Kiani Productions.
I always say, why does she always say sponsored by Kyoto Production? You've gotten so used to saying it, I just let it go.
I just love saying it. I just love to say it.
Well, you're not sponsored by me. I'm not paying you anything.
Well, you ain't got to go out and tell it and blast it. Keep it in the closet. I mean, you
Oh
know what
man,
I'm saying?
that's true.
All
Well,
right now. Hey, you know
hmm
what? I enjoy what I do. And you will be paying me soon, Buster. You know,
yeah,
but
that's true. That's true.
you know what? Hey, by the way, if you would like us to sponsor your business or anything like that, then hook us on up and maybe your girl can get some money here. But you know what? We got a wonderful guest this morning. We have a wonderful topic. We're talking about um, uh, being more better at communications or having better communication. I
I,
knew I was going to
man,
throw it in there.
I was about to say already at the gate. We just said being I can't even say it the way you just said it, but it that was a perfect gem because I knew exactly what you meant. But it was just funny how you said that, and we're talking about communication. That just made me laugh. That made my
But
day.
I thank you, Annie. But you know what? It's so good here in sunny, not necessarily sunny, but sunny North Carolina here in Kinston. You know, it feels really good, for a change because it's been really
Mhm.
freezing cold. What about that little freeze thing we had last week? I mean,
It's just a little snow, and it's just a
well,
little
we had
snow.
ice.
Someone said, "What did you just say?" Listen, you can take the woman out of the country, but you can't take the country out of the woman.
Well, I'll never want the country to come out of this country thing over here. I'm definitely from the country. Deep run.
You also had a very good day on Friday. Beautiful singing for you at the Rock Groove and Jam listening party on
Thank you.
Friday. That
I
was
I enjoyed it, Keone. I mean, with April Mile, she had her listening party at the North Carolina Titmus Theater in Raleigh, and I'm telling you, it was absolutely wonderful. All the beautiful singers and all that what she does is absolutely amazing. She's an amazing person, and it was an honor to have the privilege to sing at her party there. And it was I saw you walking on your crutches, Keone.
yeah, that was a big mistake. I was walking on the crutch and I was also walking off the crutch. And when I got home that night, my knee was the size of a football.
Oh my God.
You know, yeah, it's not. It was too early for me to be walking on torn tendons, but the show must go on, right?
So it must.
It
It
was gonna,
must go on.
it
And
was
we
gonna
must go on
be
with this
about
show
me.
today. But I do want to give a little insert. When I was talking about the ice the other week, my husband was going out the door. I said, "Baby, be careful going out the door." So out of the ring camera, I saw him. He was going out the door. All of a sudden, he was sliding on the ice. I said, "Hold it, baby, hold it! Don't fall." And he didn't fall, but that was kind of funny a little bit. But anyway, it was kind of funny, hilarious. But we got a wonderful guest today.
We do have a wonderful guest, and today we're going to talk about. Well, it's February. We know the two big things in February are Black History Month, and then we know it's also Valentine's Day comes on the 14th. It's the shortest month of the year. When there's a leap year, there's a day added to this month. There's a lot going on this month, but we were originally going to talk to someone about relationships, but we've done that to death.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about our next guest about communication. I love that he specializes in communication.
I
We
know.
talk about everything's a relationship, whether you're business partners, whether you're a coworker, boss to subordinate, friendships, and of course, the age old one, relationships. Uh,
Yes.
and all of them can fail due to many contributing factors, but one of the biggest contributing factors is communication. I also would like to talk to him about the different forms of communication and how we communicate verbally and non-verbally and how that's evolved over the span of all three of us be living. But Dr. Rudy, as we'll call him, but his name is Rudolph, Dr. Rudolph Coronado.
Coronado. Yes.
Yep. Native American heritage. He was raised near Pembroke, North Carolina. Okay. He spent his childhood in Banning Pass, a windy region between San Jacinto and San Gorgonio Mountains. I know I butchered that, and everyone can tell I did not read that before now. But I wasn't going to read that, but I was looking at it, and I was looking at the cities, and I didn't know if they were cities outside the U.S. or in the U.S., but he can tell us that. But he has a BA in communications and a minor in music. There's the connection that you have. Hard science concentration, an MS in organizational leadership and management, and a doctorate of chiropractic. So listen, he can get you together communication wise and align your body to make sure you're listening properly. I don't know those things go together. I just thought that was a good segue. So without further ado, let's get some good questions in here today, folks. But let's welcome Dr. Rudolph Coronado.
Good morning.
Wow. Good morning.
Good morning.
Such a pleasure to have you, Dr. Coronado. It is absolutely awesome, and I really enjoy the talks that we've had as well. But let's dive on into the conversation about communication. Give us a definition of communication, Dr. Coronado.
Um, I want to contrast communication with a broadcast. Communication is, to me, live when two people are interacting. A broadcast is when something's just going out and the listener, if you will, or audience doesn't have a chance to participate. And there's lots of variations in between that. Um, but communicate. Involves basically three steps: somebody doing something, somebody picking that up, and communicating back that they picked that up. So,
That's good. So it's like a receptive. It's got to be some kind of receiving on the other end
right.
and giving back.
Yeah. So, for example, if I'm listening to the radio, that's a broadcast, and I wouldn't call that broadcast communication. I would just call that a broadcast, and that falls under media, like records. I'm listening to an artist, and that's like a broadcast. They have no sense of my response. So communication is a lot more um, live.
This is good. I know you said that you in your bio before I rear off of it, get too far away. You're into music. Tell us how your relationship in music.
Well, my parents were big into communication, and music was a piece of that. They encouraged us to do piano lessons, be in the band, or art, or sports, or whatever. But the arts were a big part of it. It was big. So
Okay.
I played in a few bands, and still get a lot of benefit out of music.
You
What
know,
instrument you play?
that's
The piano or another
I
instrument?
play piano and organ. I played a Hammond
that's
B3
good.
in a band, and also play bass and rhythm guitar.
Come on now.
It's funny. Well, it's not funny about that. You know what's great about that? One of the biggest ways to communicate is through sound and through music.
Hmm.
So that's I was actually watching a documentary a couple weeks ago on war times during the medieval times and before, and how making specific sounds is how they communicated effectively over long distance. Whether that's bird calls, making animal sounds, or sounds that were natural in nature, so it would never alert someone that something was being communicated. So that's also fun too. What I wanted to ask you is, we're talking about communication, but there's a giant that you can just communicate, but then effective communication is something different. Um, Being able to effectively communicate, I may think me telling Lisette or communicating something to Lisette is being received one way, but it's not. So when that
Mhm.
happens in your experience, is that more on how I'm communicating, or is it how more on how the person is receiving that communicating? Because a lot of
Interesting.
people try to figure out, well, who's messing up the communication here, the communicator or the person listening?
Yeah, I would suggest the way we were taught to communicate in elementary school, that's incorrect grammar, that's wrong. It's part of the root of that aspect of communication later, in that you didn't say that right, or you know
Mhm.
that's not the way it's pronounced, and there's this external reference of what's right or wrong. And I would say in relationships, people develop their own speak or language or subset, and little gestures and movements communicate stuff. So the main problem is starting with too many assumptions, but we do have to start with some.
That's true because sometimes, you're wondering, well, what is it? I didn't quite catch it right, or maybe you didn't quite deliver it right. And I
Mhm.
think sometimes people don't quite deliver it. They think their communication is your communication, and I think is not necessarily so. Am I wrong about that?
Well, what I would suggest we all, I like this. There's only one Earth, but there's many, many worlds. You're in your world, I'm in my world,
Mm.
and communication has to do with worlds. Everybody agrees on water, trees, plants, but we're in our world, and we need to learn other people's model of the world so we can meet them there.
That's powerful.
Yeah. So and the best way to meet somebody at their model of the world is to mirror their breathing.
Mirror their what?
Breathe.
Breathing.
Okay.
So if somebody's breathing really fast, you can say calm down, but that didn't meet them, did it? But you can say calm down, calm down. Do you hear the difference there? Where I met
Mm-hmm.
intensity, it acknowledged, and a lot of about communication isn't about necessarily agreement, but feeling heard and understood, whether you agree or not. And if we're focused on what's right and wrong, we're going to have a lot of issues.
That's good.
Well, to be an effective communicator, you also need an effective listener. Um, I believe many times I'll have to stop someone because I'll see people when someone's explaining something or telling them something. You can literally look at their face and tell they're not listening. They're just waiting for you to stop talking so they can respond.
That's true.
And so I can see that this conversation is not going to go where it needs to go sometimes when I'm observing people talk.
Yeah, a medicine man I studied under in Virginia made this statement: if you tell somebody the truth and they don't understand it, you haven't told them the truth.
Wow.
Like I said, I told you, I told you, I told you, but if you didn't understand it, I haven't told you the truth.
This is good, doctor, because the Bible says, in all thy getting, get an understanding. A lot of times what helps me when someone tells me something or communicates to me, I throw back to them what they threw back at me. and how I received it. I said, so are you saying this, that, and the other? And sometimes they say, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Sometimes they say, no, that's not what I meant. I mean, I like to, they might say, well, you kind of slow, ain't you? I said, no, I'm not trying to be slow. I want to make sure I understand what you are doing or what you said. So are you saying that I want to be receptive of what you're saying, but in order to do that, I need to make sure I understand what you're saying. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that it comes to. I use a lot of contrasting things to describe. One, are you tolerating them, or are they tolerating you, or are they accepting what you're saying, and are you accepting what they're saying, whether you agree or not?
You know what you just said is extremely important because you just said whether you agree or whether you're not. I think some people don't understand that. Accepting what I'm saying and listening to what I'm saying is not necessarily you believing in what I'm saying. Because one thing that becomes hard to effectively communicate is when someone has a belief or they're stuck in a belief, whether that belief is right or wrong. It's hard to communicate any other type of viewpoint with that person.
Yeah, and I have a word for that.
Uh
Uh,
oh.
I call it poop theory. If somebody needs to take a poop, we need to let them finish evacuating so there's space. Another example would be a child, mommy, 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 mommy. Sit down, I'm busy. Mommy, mommy, mommy. Sometimes letting that person finish their expression physically, mentally, emotionally will provide space that's needed. Because if you don't have space, you have no place to work. And sometimes saying less leaves more space. Um,
Absolutely. And Clarence, we have a live chat going on, doctor, and Clarence Cornegay says, some may think your smile means I want you, when it may simply means I am being polite. That's true.
Let me share the some C's, the five C's. I came up with some of them. Some friends I have in Northern Virginia that I try to visit. We talk about communication a lot. The husband Chris says the only problem we're ever going to have with people is communication.
Hmm.
And the C's are clear, complete, concise, context, and consensual. And most misunderstandings in communication come with context. So if I say, I know the best pizza restaurant in the world, is there any context there? No, I made a conclusion. What I could have said, the place I like eating pizza the best would be. And then now that opens up a conversation. Well, what do you like about it? And
Hmm.
what I demonstrated there were a lot of people talking conclusions, which
I
is
like that.
conversation. Oh, you need to go here. Oh, no, you don't want to do that. That's stupid. And that's a conclusion as opposed to saying, I don't see the benefit of that. And that means I didn't say there would or would not be benefit. I'm saying at this point, I don't see it. And if we talk in a progressive s- sense as opposed to conclusion, and that's a big part of the speak of royalty and people in power. They just make conclusions, like the judge guilty.
Isn't that what couples do sometimes, or maybe in relationships, like maybe like if your husband comes home, how was your day? Fine. You're not what's wrong with you? Nothing. I mean, or I mean, what's wrong?
Oh,
You know,
hold on a
to
sec.
a conclusion.
You just went over the thing that always got me upset, whether it was in a relationship, friendship, or anywhere else. When something's not really bothering you and people keep asking you what's wrong and you keep telling them there's nothing wrong,
Hmm.
to the point to where now you're getting angry because you keep asking me and they go, see, I told you something's wrong. It's like, yeah,
Exactly.
right.
Exactly.
They get you to the point where they get you so upset to where they can go, see, I told you you were upset.
That's it. They make you upset.
Sometimes literally nothing happened at work. It was very routine and mundane. It's
But
not
that's not what I want from you is what
well.
happened.
Well, this is the question I wanted to draw because me Lisette just said that. So doctor, is she drawing the conclusion that I just don't want to talk about my work day instead of just hearing me say nothing really happened?
Okay, so here's what I call one of the most important context has to do with age and gender.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to make some generalizations now.
Mm-hmm.
When um, there was a real good joke by Bill Engvall, one of the blue collar guys. He came home. He had went to the gym and he said, "Oh, by the way, Tom and Mary are separating." And he
Oh,
goes, and he goes, "Why?" He goes, "I don't know." He just told me they're separating. And uh, that example would be where a female would want to know more about the relationship. Um, a guy thing, well, the Eagles won. How did they win? What happened? All these details. Hey, they won.
well, doctor, you just picked the best guy, and he did one on a. I think the better one for what you were saying. The gym was the golf one. He told, where he comes back and she's like, "How was golfing with Tim?" He was like, "It was great." Well, how's he doing about Teresa? They just got a divorce. I don't know. Well, how are the girls doing? How are they taking it? I don't know. Is he seeing anyone else? He's like, I don't know. She's like, well, what'd you guys talk about? We talked about golfing.
Yeah, great, and not right or wrong, but that would be some context.
Yeah.
And what I talk about the difference between a relationship and a situation, and
Hmm.
to me that would be a good example of a situation. The wife doesn't play golf,
Hmm.
and he does, and so there's not going to be typically be a lot of communication about that.
Hmm.
Where in
Well,
relationships, that implies commitment and interaction about stuff.
uh,
And in a really good there'll be relationship between a couple. There will be some things that uh, the woman doesn't do, or the man doesn't do, or person A or person B does or doesn't do, and that's kind of outside the communication. And to dwell in there sometimes can be really. It's hard to meet a person in their model of the world if you're not into that. What people do when they golf
I
or
got
at
a
the
question, then
gym.
I'm gonna throw it back to Lisette. So one of the things I want to ask, based on what you just said, is because I'm always talking about the different relationships between people. I had a friend recently that says, "Hey, I said something on a mutual friend's Facebook and they blocked me and they explained what they said." And I said, well, I probably wouldn't have said that. I was like, well, you say something close to that. I said, well, you have to understand every relationship is different. Me and this person have been friends for 15 years. You guys have been friends for a year. I'm allotted to say and do certain things that you are not in
It's a
this.
different context and a
Mhm.
different consensuality.
Ah,
Mm.
that second part, a different consensuality.
Yeah, a lot of people hijack consensual to have to do with physical relationships. But
Mhm.
if somebody calls me up and I really can't talk, I should say this isn't a good time unless it's an emergency. And um, doing those courtesies. However, people that know each other really good know
Mhm.
when it's a good time to talk or not. I knew a couple, if they had a spat, they might not talk or it'd be short or curt. And when the wife thought it was time to talk, she'd cook pintos, cabbage, and cornbread. And that was her ritual of truce. And I suggest people that know each other really well have a sense of that without really being conscious of it.
That's interesting. That is really interesting because we was my husband and I was talking about sex this morning, and so
What?
All right, we do it sometimes, you know,
You are such a naughty influence on that
sometimes.
pure-hearted Clarence.
No, I was asking him since since the show is going to be about communication. I said, how do I communicate to you that I want sex? I want intimate time with you. How do I communicate it, and how you communicate with me? So it was funny because we was kind of like, right on how we knew the other want to get our freak on.
Well, it's
Mhm.
easier for men. We're very visual. If you wear a certain thing, we know what time it is. You don't have to say much. Men don't need words. We
That's
don't
true.
need words.
That's true.
Yeah, and I've heard it said too that the female sexuality is more formal. There needs to be an appetizer, a salad,
Mhm.
a
Yeah.
s the meal, the entree, dessert, and coffee,
Mhm.
and where men just want to eat and then
Interesting.
go to the next thing. And I think it's really important that there are aspects of both of those that could be appreciated by both.
I I think what you're saying is mostly true, but what I've through my experience, what I realized is it'll stay that first way for the male too, knowing you need all those things and enjoy doing all those things when the relationship is healthy and when both of them are keeping that spark. Sometimes in relationships, one or the other is kind of not doing the things that incense me to deliver that. It gets to a point. See, a lot of it's mostly long tenured marriages. You get to that point where it's like it becomes a formality.
An
It's my
obligation.
birthday, it's my anniversary, it's Wednesday, and it becomes a roll over and do it. No, that happened, and that's when it loses that
Absolutely.
effectiveness.
I agree.
Yeah, I would suggest it would be really good for men to appreciate affection
Hmm.
beyond sexual beyond the sexual context.
Hmm.
Um, and that how do I say that helps keep things alive, and instead of doing the deed, you can do the ritual. You can go through that, and that creates more connection and context. What they talk about in school about sex education is just the biology of reproduction, and not the romance and the other parts that allow fulfillment as opposed to just release.
Will a
Interesting.
passive aggressive person ever be an effective communicator?
Um, I would say they could if there's some motivation for change. Um, we all have our own model of the world. Uh, One of the things I feel really fortunate about, because my mother emphasized me behaving and not understanding why I need to behave. I see a lot of women try to get you need to do this because of this. You need to do this because of this, as opposed to young males need to learn how to behave. And as we get older, we learn why. But if we've already got those behaviors built in, we get a lot of benefits.
This is good because that's my next question to you, Doctor. What are some of the um, maybe the issues that can be the reason why there's bad communication in relationships? What can that be like? Either whether that's between a husband and wife, or a partner, or a worker at work, or
Mhm.
what are some of the little bad connotations that perhaps you know is a culprit behind them acting the way that they may be acting.
Yeah, and also why we're offended by the way they're acting. So I suggest that we all have triggers. A lot of them are instinctual. We also have the ability to get beyond the trigger. So if somebody does something and I react, I don't like that. I can get to the point to where I don't react. I'll give an example. Somebody cuts me off. I react. I go into road rage. Um, Now, if I work on that, when somebody cuts in front of me, I do what I need to do to be more safe, and then I take a deep breath. And now I've developed a response instead of a reaction. And if I work on that long enough, that will be my reaction to be
That's
calm.
good.
That will be my. But it's about a big part of it's about accepting your personality. Some people are going to talk faster, some slower, some more scattered, some too organized. But appreciating your style and developing your communication off your style, off your person, your personality. And as I spoke earlier, all these rules about grammar and speech that we get from school, where we can compare ourselves to that.
You know, it's so funny about you saying that. How we all need to understand how we communicate. I have a worker, Albert. Hey, Albert. Albert is one of those guys that he will never answer just the question you ask. For instance, you know how you ask someone a yes or no question and they give you a long explanation? So me and him, we've been working on 6 months because I'll ask him, "Hey, did you finish the spreadsheet?" And he'll explain for me for 5 minutes straight on why it's not done. And I said, "Albert, I just wanted to know." I didn't. And then now I kind of get. It took a while, but now when I ask him a question, I get shorter answers because he used to give me so much information, and I'm like, I didn't ask for any of that.
Here's an example. I have a friend, his father would tell him to do something. And if
Mhm.
he started to do it the next time without being asked, he would be stopped and reprimanded. My father expected me to figure out what to do next or be proactive. So we got raised in totally different expectations. And he thought doing something without being asked was disrespectful. And I thought not looking to do something a
Oh
little extra
yeah.
offer. So a big part is, looking at the the family we grew up in. Uh, Another good example, you got somebody who works 9 to 5, is always home at dinner. They eat at 5:30. You have another person who's a contractor,
Mhm.
and they get in at various hours, and the wife's cooking, and she's upset because the husband isn't there on dinner on time. She probably grew up in a home where dinner was always at the same time. Again, these models of the world are real important to be able um, to accept as opposed to tolerate, because toleration interferes with communication.
Hey, Rudy, can you tilt your camera down just a little bit? One of the things I wanted to touch on when you just said the model and you're saying kids, and the second about you this, one of the things that we're that parents are doing better that we didn't used to do is understanding that you may have to communicate to each child differently. You know, it used to be, nope, everyone's talked to the same way, everyone's handled the same way, and it's like that was never a good thing because every one of them have a different personality. You
Now
know,
that is true. I got to cut you in.
yeah,
That is
like
so true. That's true.
yeah, like my niece, if I told her when she was with me, go take out the trash, everything's done properly. My nephew, I have to say, go take out the trash and the trash around the trash can because when I come and I go, hey, and he goes, what? I took out the trash. I'm like, well, what about this piece of paper on the floor? Well, you didn't tell me to pick up the trash around the trash can. And it's like, what? So I knew when I told him to do something, I had to, if I say wash the dishes, I have to say wash the dishes and clean the sink after you're
Be
done.
specific.
Whereas
Yep.
my
I'm glad
niece,
you brought up about that, because when I was told to wash the dishes, I washed the dishes. I didn't clean off the table.
yeah,
So a big part of
Um,
personality And again with models of the world. Oh, it goes without saying. You should know that. Those are all
No.
conclusions, as
Yeah.
This is
as
good.
opposed to saying, "Wow, I misspoke." Um, when I said take out the trash, I probably should have said, as you're walking to the trash can, look around. If there's anything, pick it up, put it in the trash can, then take the trash out, and then make sure things are neat. And I'll say it that way next time.
Because I saw Lisette's face when you said I didn't know to clean off the table. She threw her hands up, and I was like, "Look,
That
different
reminds me
world."
of my daughter. This is so good, Keone and Doctor. Because you know, I would tell my daughter to go and wash the dishes. Okay, she washed the dishes, and then I would see food all up there on the countertop. She's already done gone to her room. I said, "What about the countertop? What about the food on the floor, the crumbs?" Oh, Ma, we ain't got to do all that. I said, yes, you do. So I went to visit her at her place when she got older. And here she go wiping stuff. I said, what? Ma, look what you're doing. Make sure you make sure you wipe off the countertops and stuff. I said,
Yeah,
oh,
it's her space now. But the thing that you just talked about, I'm going to be a little general, do a little generalization, a little stereotypical, but we know this happens. Expectations, right? There's always that joke of you're sitting in the living room, your wife comes in and says, "Hey, we're out of milk." And you go, "Okay." And you continue watching TV. And then she comes back 30 minutes later and she's like, "You haven't gone to the store to get milk?" And you're like, "When did you say go to the store and get milk? You just said we're out of
exactly.
milk." So she's assuming, and it used to always baffle me. It's like, why can't you just walk in here and say, "Can you go to the store and get milk?" Why
And
do
get
we
the
have to
milk.
do why do we have to say, "Hey, we're out of milk," and that's my clue to get up and go to the store to get milk?
This is good, Keone and Doctor. I
Wait,
see
hold on, hold
correct.
on. I wanted him to respond to that.
Okay.
No, the they're kind of segueing off what you said. Um, Men tend to be, again, I'm using stereotypes, tend to be more focused and need to be interrupted, where women are multitasking, got
Mhm.
six things on the mind and two things ready to jump in. And men will usually not hear the first word. That's the word that gets their attention. They start listening after that. So when a woman says, "Don't forget to take out the trash," what was the first word? Don't.
Don't.
And so if that's left out of the sentence, forget to take out the trash. So I think women, and in general, need to get the person they're talking to's attention. Women, in my experience, tend to listen really better or not listen at all.
Oh, what
Men
he
need to
just
be redirected. Hold on, what? And then you can commence.
Lisette, what he's just saying, because you guys will do that trap where you like to ask us questions when we're in the middle of something. Because
Mm-hmm.
especially if it's something you want to yes, because we're not paying attention. I remember the one time me and my ex-wife almost got, because it's funny. I always say 7 years of marriage, and we got into I think two arguments. Um, but the first one was I was sitting on a couch. I just got home. I'm taking off my army boots. She walks out in an evening dress, and I'm like, "Oh my god, what did I forget?" That's what I'm saying in my head. And she's like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I just was taking off my books." And then her face was like, "I told you." I said, "Wait, wait, wait. Before we get into an argument, because I guess we're going somewhere nice. When did you tell me and what did you tell me about? On Monday, when you got up, I said, "You mean Monday when I was 30 minutes late because I kept hitting the snooze and I was running out of the house half dressed trying to get the PT?" And she paused for a second. She's like, "You weren't listening to me." Of course I wasn't. I was running out of the door late. I
Exactly.
told you that.
Exactly.
And we
This is
avoided
good.
the whole argument because she realized it was a terrible time to tell me some important information. Um, like you said, and I wasn't paying attention. I was super focused on getting to work because I'm late.
Understandably,
I
this
think
is
it's good for people to have clues when something's really important. I
mm,
avoid it goes without saying. If
Uh,
it's important, I need to say it. My mother would talk softer. when things were important, and she would slow down, and that would get my attention.
Hmm.
She didn't talk faster and get louder. She talked softer and slower. And different things are going to work in different relationships. Um, the how y- the idea of speech, how quickly you talk. Do you pause? Do you wait for feedback or a broadcast? Um, we're going to dinner next week. That's a broadcast. We're
Hmm.
going to dinner next week, and then waiting for a response. And if you don't get a response, you really don't have communication.
That's powerful. That's powerful. I see that Clarence Cornegay says, he says some parents used to say children or are to be seen, not heard. They did not listen to their children.
I literally heard a kid say this to his mom about a month or two ago, and I thought he was about to get tore up, but she actually paused and heard what he said because she was like, it was at Target, and she's like, "You're always lying. You never tell the truth." He's like, "Because you never listen anyway." And I was like,
Ooh.
"Ooh." And she stopped for a second, and the
Ooh.
father came around. He's like, "What did you say?" And she's like, "I was." She asked me why I was lying. She's like, "You never listen." And the mom looked at the dad, and the dad was like, "Well." He was like stuck between a rock and a hard place. It's like, I wanted to defend my wife, but he's right because you don't listen to me. She was like, she's like, I do listen. He's like, no, you don't. And I'm over here being nosy, just listening to the whole conversation. She's like, no, you don't. And then he brought up a situation. She's like, oh yeah. And it was like, it was just, I don't know. I could just see the expression on her face was like, I don't listen to you. And he's like, no, you never listen to me because you're a
That's
child.
powerful.
And a lot of people have that um, attitude that Clarence said. If you're a child, you're not allowed to express yourself. You're not allowed to be heard. Why do I need to listen to you? I'm the parent. I'm the adult.
This is really good. So, this is powerful
He wanted to
because
respond. Hold on, Lisette. He's trying to respond.
Yeah, the that Um, I asked the question, why don't either of y'all speak Yiddish? Well, you didn't grow up with Yiddish in the house, and you haven't been around it, so I can't expect you to do that.
Hmm.
And a lot of our parents and generations beyond them grew up in really tough circumstances for survival. In the running the household had to do almost like on a military operation. I think it's a luxury when parents can have a lot of time to listen to their children. And I hope more people can be in that situation. Um, but we learned through oppression how to take orders. Don't talk back to me, um, which discourages children from being curious and learning how to communicate. I want to bring up a term called rhetoric, and that's used pejorative, like, oh, that's just rhetoric. Where originally rhetoric was a way of speaking to assert your position or argument, not in terms of a fight, but to assert a position. Um, should we have a 4-day work week or should we have school year round? You could argue about that, or you could, or bicker, I'll say, or if you had some good arguments of how it might save money. Um, but when we're texting all the time, we can't do that, and we don't practice. And when we've grown up, and children should be seen and not heard, we're not practiced. And I suggest we should practice communication the same way we practice hygiene. Think of all the time you spend grooming, washing your car, your clothes, dry cleaning. If that amount of time could be spent on practicing communication, and again, with your own style, your own goals and aims there.
But what would you say about children that would rather, or someone, not necessarily a child, maybe even perhaps an adult really, that would rather text to communicate with you or to you, or instead of speaking with you, and that tend to feel that you get more communication out of them when they text instead of speaking.
Okay. Well, when a person texts, you can't interrupt or ask questions. And while I think in general interruption is should be avoided, if you said a sentence and you're going to the next one and I don't understand the first one, I should be able to say, "Excuse me, can you clarify that?" And texting is broadcasting. I texting to me is me just saying I'm running 5 minutes late, or we're meeting at 8 o'clock, question mark. But to go back and forth, I'm losing my, I'm dumbing down my communication.
It's two things with tech. That's why I like that some phones, when it shows that symbol, whether it's the dots that the person is typing, it lets me know to stop what I'm saying next because they might have something to respond to of what I text. I feel for me when I'm texting, it's because I don't have the time to sit on the phone and talk to you. Some people you have to text. Some people you can't have a 5 minute conversation. They turn it into a 45-minute conversation and don't know how to get off the phone. So I do understand that. The one thing I am worried about text, and I always tell people in my classes, we do a thing called speech basics, where we talk about 5 levels of communication: tone, tempo, pronunciation, enunciation, and precision. Getting what you need to say out in a very proficient way and not elongating it and
Sync
filibustering
some
to
things.
get your
Okay.
point across. And one of the things I was talking about in that section is two things when it comes to text. And you can tell me if you agree or disagree. Some people read text in whatever mood they're in. I've texted my sister before, and her response, I was like, "Wait, you definitely took that." And I'll call her, and I can hear that she's mad about something in her voice. I was like, "Oh, you read that text in the emotion that you're in." That's number one. And number two, I always say if you text someone something and you get a response back that seems to be off from what you're texting, that's your cue to stop texting and just call, because you're going to go down that rabbit hole of trying to explain and re-explain, and now you're both getting frustrated. Your
Yeah,
response to that?
yeah. The, the thing I find most challenge about trying to text is there's no context, and I try to text only things that don't need context. Kind of like I'm running 5 minutes late. That doesn't need a context. I'm going to be 30 minutes late. That needs some context. Well, should we redo this, reschedule? 5 minutes doesn't really need context to me. And
Especially when it comes to questions. You can read a question different ways. I could read that in my head as, why the hell do you need to, even though she didn't say that. Some people will read it that way. Some people read it as, it's none of your dang business, which is, that's not what she said either.
yeah,
But we'll make up our own context, or as you said, conclusions in our head of what that person meant, instead of measure. One of the biggest ones I always say is measure intent. If you know someone long enough, you should know the intent on the messaging, whether it's through text, whether it's verbally. And sometimes, even with good intentions, something doesn't come out right. So I always try to measure the intent. Um,
I like that. One of the and I try to share intent. Usually, if I email somebody, I always offer a greeting before um, going to what I'm wanting to talk about. In France, there's a lot of formality. Bonjour. You greet each person as a human before you do business. And here at the convenience store, five on number seven, or in that. declaring intent, I think, uh, um, is as important as receiving it.
You so right
That's
about that
good.
over here, Lisette, because
That's
remember
good.
what happened between me and you the other day. I had to correct
Mhm.
my, I had to stop myself. Remember, because I
Right.
called you and you're like, "Hey, how are you doing?" I'm like, "Hey, Lisette." So by the way, and I was like, and I remember I stopped. I said, "You know what? I always call you and get right to business. It's
Yes.
always hey, and then right to business." And I had to stop, doctor, and I said, "Wait a minute, Lisette, hold on. How are you doing?"
Thank you.
Remember?
That was awesome when you did that.
Yeah,
I really
and
appreciate that.
I would say it would be fine to get right to business, but I suggest you can end on a higher note by starting with a formality.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, because sometimes we get so business focused here when we because everyone texts so much nowadays. Now when we call, it's like I liken it to going to the mall these days. When we went to the mall when you were younger, you went there and you could be there for hours. Now, if you go to the mall, you're going to a very specific particular store. If even if you go to the mall, you're getting what you want and you're out of there. You're not
That's
walking
true.
around and you know taking in the ambiance and going to different shops. You're not really doing
Browsing,
that.
window shopping, yeah.
No, it's like in and out, and I think that's the way over here, especially because I when I go to Europe, it's totally different. Especially when I go to New York, it's even amplified. I
Oh,
was thanking someone too long in the line, and the pizza guy was like, "Okay, get out of the way, thank you."
here's I want to share a couple more things here. Do people try to control or manage a conversation? And I
Uh,
suggest manage is always better. Controls are for machines.
That's
And,
good.
and concern or worry. I encourage people to avoid worrying because you can't express worry. You can be concerned, and concern is usually expressed. And again, that moves something instead of it being stuck, being concerned.
I like that. Being polite and maybe sometimes if we would give the same person the
Offer.
patience and the yes as we would want someone to do for us,
Hmm.
sometimes, just like the little boy you said, the child in the store, when he said to his mother, you know, you don't listen, that was amazing and beautiful all in this, surprising to her, but she needed to hear that to get better. Something I was thinking about, Doctor. What about in relationships? As far as couples, um, marital partner relationship, is it very important to express to your other that how you feel and some of the things that you want before you go into a seemingly long-term relationship or possibly maybe a marital status?
Yeah, commit different levels of commitment. Even within solid marriages, there's different levels of commitment. Um, I think it's important to uh, look at expression is not, well, I expressed that, but did I share it? Did I offer it so it could be received? Or did I share it in a way that I just plopped it in your plate? And language is what is one to one. And an example: F. Lee Bailey, who was a lawyer on the OJ trial, said he had a meeting with an army sergeant. In the news, somebody called the army sergeant up and said, "Well, you had a meeting with F. Lee Bailey." He goes, "I never had a meeting with F. Lee Bailey." And F. Lee Bailey said, "Yes, I did." And the army sergeant defined meeting as a a planned time to do something, or F. Lee Bailey just called him up. So it was not a meeting. So who's right or wrong? And that became an argument point. And
Interesting.
I think we need to be loose in how we interpret other people and be very strict in how we express to minimize that. Here's another one. A guy gets on the subway, and there's a man already on the subway with two kids, and these two kids are running around acting crazy, screaming and yelling, and the man's thinking, "What a bad father." And he sits down, and then the bad father looks up at him and he goes, "My wife just died of cancer, and I don't know how to tell the children."
What's that? Did you cut off?
No,
No,
so
I'm right here.
Oh,
I
okay.
was just no, I'm here. It's just deep. Just some good stuff here.
All right.
I really
Awesome.
one other really neat is a movie, The Sting, where they um, have you guys ever seen that? Uh,
Yes.
Robert Newman, Paul Newman, but that misunderstanding of words at the end made somebody lose lot of money, and it was perfectly misunderstood. And that would be for us to be real clear on how we speak, and also scrutinize how people speak to us.
Awesome. Dr. Ruda, I thank you so much for being on today. From me, I'd like to say that because I know the set's about to wrap up. So I just want to say I always like talking about communication, so I like you being on today.
Well, good. I really enjoyed it, and I practice communication every day. I'm working on it.
so awesome. I hate to cut it off because communication is so very important. In every aspect of life. We need to. If you, it's kind of like something that I wrote down real quickly. I'm gonna express this. It says, well, um, if it's unclear, not concise, disrespectful,
Hmm.
misunderstanding, toxic relationship is likely due to ineffective communication.
Yes, I like that.
So something's is that's how important communication is, even in your with your husband or your wife or your friend or your partner or your job, your out in the community. If something is not right, you need to go back to the source of communication. All right. And I want to thank you so much for being. Thank you so much, Doctor
I
um,
enjoyed it.
Coronado, for coming on Rise with. Let me do it right. Rise with Lisette live talk show. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and to all of you out there, please like and share it with someone that maybe can use this information. And go out today, and remember, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And go out today, being more aware of communication, and let's get some good communication going on. You have a blessed day, and thank you. Thank you, Kiana.